Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here is your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning and welcome back to another Sunday morning at Faith in Our Hometown. We're glad you've joined us this morning. My guests this morning are going to be Reverend Hannah McHale and her husband, Dr. Hannah McHale. Donna is the pastor of the Traders Church here, that's T-R-I-D-E-R-S, in downtown Joplin. Okay, all right, it's fine.
Thank you.
Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here is your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning and welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown, our weekly discussion about matters of faith that affect us as people of faith here in the greater Joplin area. So we're glad you joined us for a Sunday morning. My guests this morning are going to be Reverend Hannah McHale and her husband, Dr. Hannah McHale. Donna is the pastor of the Traders Church, which is a Church of the Nazarene in the downtown area, and Hannah is one of our local audiologists. Maybe the only one? I don't know. But at any rate, the only one I know. So. We're going to be talking today a little bit about a Christian view or the Christian face of immigration. We've done a little show on immigration a few weeks ago. We've gotten some good feedback on it, and so we wanted to kind of stay on that issue because it's a really big issue and a big topic for us right now, especially with things that are going on in the political scene. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Christian viewpoints on immigration and talk to Hannah, who's an immigrant himself. And we're going to take this Mercy Minute, and we're going to be right back. So stay tuned, don't go away, and we'll be back in just a moment.
The different bariatric surgical options here at Mercy Joplin includes laparoscopic room-wide gastric bypass, laparoscopic sleeve gastrectomy, and laparoscopic lap band placement. In addition, we also offer revisional laparoscopic surgeries for those patients that have had previous bariatric procedures but have had failures. The surgical procedure of choice will vary with different individuals, and so that's why our team will work with the patient on an individual basis to determine which procedure is the best fit for them. All three of the bariatric procedures that we offer here at Mercy Joplin have a long track record of proven safety and efficacy. The best procedure for the individual has to be a decision to be decided between the patient and the physician.
Well, thanks for joining us again this morning. Again, my guests, Reverend Hannah McHale and her husband, Dr. Hannah McHale. So welcome to both of you. Why don't you introduce yourselves a little bit, and we'll get into our topic right after that.
Well, as you said, my name's Hannah McHale. I come from Champaign, Illinois, via Kansas City.
Okay.
And then to Joplin. We moved here because of my husband's job. And we have 2 children, and they have 2 spouses. And we're expecting our first grandchild in February.
Oh, no, that'll be more fun. They're a lot more fun than the kids, I want to tell you that.
Me.
Yeah. And so, Hannah, you yourself are an immigrant, correct?
Yes.
So you come from?
I was born and raised in Egypt, and I came to the United States in 1983 as a visiting ear, nose, and throat doctor at KU Medical Center in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
I did research work with them. They offered me a PhD in audiology. I went home. I got rid of my practice, and I came back and here I am.
There you are. So all these years later, so you know from which you speak immigration firsthand. Okay.
Very much.
I mean, we really do have a Christian viewpoint on immigration, but you don't hear it very often. And I know we've talked about that, which is one of the reasons why I invited you to come on the show and to talk about this.
Sure.
So, you know, from your viewpoint, you know, Donna, what should a Christian's viewpoint be on the issue of immigration? What do the scriptures tell us about that? How do we approach that?
We need to love.
Okay.
You know, we need to take care of our widows and our orphans. So what does that look like for us?
Yeah.
You know, and we live in a country that we need to abide by the laws of the land.
Both things, and sometimes those things are, you know, come at cross purposes. Exactly. You know, I'm always amazed at when I go back and read it. It's so stark when we're being told that you will not oppress or molest the stranger or the
Yes,
alien,
exactly.
because you yourselves were strangers and aliens in a foreign land. And if you don't, you know, if you do not open your hearts in hospitality and those things,
That's right.
God says basically, you're in trouble.
Exactly.
You know, and that becomes such a, I mean, it's almost in your face, you know, is how abrupt it is. But we kind of have a tendency to either ignore it or downplay it when we look at our scriptures, because, you know, sometimes it's not what we want to do.
Well, and there's a fine line between following scripture and our country. What, you know, we're part of a country. You know, how patriotic are we? But this comes first, and I think we need, you know, our allegiance to God comes before our allegiance to our country.
Yeah, and that sometimes, you know, that message doesn't always sit well, you know?
Not always.
You know, and again, I think you can be a faithful person and yet still be a good citizen of the United States, still a good citizen of the state of Missouri.
Sure.
I mean, I try to do both, but I really do believe that you know, you said something that was very true. I mean, fortunately, I don't know that I've ever been completely pitted one against the other, and I hope to God I never am. But where would my first allegiance be? Well, my first allegiance would be to God
Right.
and what God's telling me.
When he first came to the country and we would visit the immigration office, I had a lot of soul searching to do, because I looked around and these were people that just wanted to come into our country and not do much. And I said, this is why we have a hard time with immigrants, because they don't seem to want to speak English and those kind of things, which that was 30 years ago, and I've learned a lot since then.
Okay, yeah.
And my faith has grown.
Yeah.
And so
it was your own personal challenge first.
very much so.
Makes it a little easier when you go to preach if you've already been through it
Very much
first,
so.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Exactly, no doubt.
When you're convicted yourself, you know, when you know you're guilty, it makes it a little easier
Yeah.
to say it to everybody else.
That
you
is
know?
very
You
true.
know, but yeah.
Very true.
So what changes did you have to go through when you were struggling with all those issues?
Well, family gatherings. You know, I am madly in love with this man, and I go to a family gathering and they're all speaking Arabic. Well, how do I fit into this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that was one of the personal things. You know, it's amazing how I've grown way past that, and go ahead and speak Arabic. I'll figure out what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just watching people and the needs that they have, as though I'm looking at them through Jesus' eyes, has enlightened me to love others that are different than me, besides my husband.
Yeah.
So.
And, you know, sometimes I believe that there is a challenge. Sometimes we just, and I think this is true for all of us, depending on where we are, if we've never met somebody from, you know, a different country or a different background or those kinds of things, it makes it a little bit more difficult. When we do, and we see a face, so I mean, you know, this is not just an immigrant now,
Right.
It's Hannah, okay? And he's a doctor here in our community and all those things. So I mean, any of his patients, you know him and trust him, those
Sure.
kinds of things. But when somebody doesn't know, you know, that makes it a little bit more difficult. You know, it's just kind of like, oh, you know, am I going to be okay with this person? What was your experience as when you came? I mean, did you feel mistrust or did you feel trusted? How does it work now?
Actually, in a big city like Kansas City, I didn't feel much because it's a huge community over there. But when we moved to Joplin here, it's a very close community. So accepting a foreign doctor in what they call God's country here, it was difficult at the beginning.
At the beginning.
And sometime I had, for instance, I had a patient one time, he had severe hearing loss. And one of the tests we do is speech discrimination to see how he can distinguish sounds. So because he did poorly on that test, he came back at me and said, it's because of your accent. Accent has nothing to do with understanding speech unless if you're hearing impaired.
Mm-hmm.
So these little things I learned to just let it go. Don't let it bother me, because there is, when I have 100 people good and just one bad, I learned to just cope with it.
And learn to accept
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I would say that, I mean, and this is, I think this is certainly true. We've certainly had an influx of foreign doctors, you know, here in our own area. I mean, I know it's very common anymore, where, you know, again, 30 years ago, it would not have been as common to have a doctor from outside the United States, but certainly now, the experience is that we recruit in some ways medical, you know, experts from other areas because, well, you know, we would have a hard time meeting all the medical needs of our area
Most
if we didn't
definitely.
have some of the folks from outside, so that's skilled labor from outside the community.
You betcha.
So and that's happening more and more now, you know, even in places like Joplin, where it happened in the larger cities, you know, much earlier. Have you ever felt any discrimination because of the fact, or are you kind of protected from some of that because you're a doctor?
I don't know, maybe because of my profession, I don't feel it much. Matter
Yeah,
of fact,
it's 9/11.
yeah, 9/11, like when I drive, my way to home is around Duquesne Police. I noticed that sometime they were following me shortly after 9/11.
Right.
But after that and before that, I really didn't feel any kind of discrimination. People welcomed us, and I thought I would be in this area for 1 year, and we've been here 27 years.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I didn't know
So-
how long I was going to stay, but I've been here 11 now.
Yeah, that's good.
So we'll see what happens, you know.
That's very good.
But you know, we you know, so you only came with a commitment of 1 year, and now you've been here for 27.
27. We
Wow.
thought, because it's a small community, we lived in Kansas City. She comes from Champaign. I used to live in Alexandria in Egypt, which is about 10 million. So Joplin was like the boonies for us.
Oh yeah.
So that's why we thought after 1 year we're out of here.
What did you think you went when you went to Champaign?
Well, that was a whole different story.
And even that's a college town, but
The
even so,
university
it's still small. There's no doubt about it. It's still
Yeah.
small. So in terms of that whole thing, but you weren't fleeing from, so you weren't seeking any refugee status or anything like that when you came to the United States, were you?
No, not really. I
Okay.
came as a visiting doctor. And then it happened that we met at KU and we fell in love and we got married.
Yeah.
And I continued my education here, and now this is home for me.
Right.
I lived in the United States more than I lived in Egypt now.
Yeah.
And most of my family, they live here, most of them in Temecula, California, or Clearwater, Florida.
Right.
So I don't have anybody left in Egypt. But it was the joy that I enjoyed most here when I came, the freedom to hear the word about Christ on TV, on radio. Back home, Christians are minority.
Right.
We don't have a voice because the country is about 90 million, 10 million Christian and 80 million Muslim. So the Christian are there is some kind of a persecution there.
So yeah, it's a little tougher,
Definitely.
you know, to live that life openly.
Definitely.
I am going to say something real quick before we take a little break here in a minute or so. But you're from the Coptic Orthodox, you know, background,
Yes.
which is one of the ancient churches. It's like so the Roman Catholic Church, you know, based in Rome, the Coptic Church based in Alexandria,
That's right.
Egypt. So one of what we would consider one of the ancient Christian churches in that regard. You, like us, are very ritualistic, those kinds of things. You're really in the minority down here. I mean, Catholics are really in the minority here as well, Roman Catholics, but Coptic, you know, Catholics, if you will, are would be more than because do you know of any other Copts in this area?
I know some in Springfield.
Okay, all right.
But in town here, as far as I know, I don't have anybody.
Okay.
I'm the only one.
Yeah, I used to take my students when I was over at Southeast Missouri State. We would do field trips when I was teaching world religions, and once in a while we'd land in St. Louis and we'd go to the Coptic Orthodox Church because we just, again, I wanted them to see things that they didn't normally see, to see just a different way of doing some things. But yeah, down here would be a little bit, a little bit more hard pressed to find that religious variety. At any rate, we are going to be back in just a minute. We're talking a little bit and trying to again put a little bit of a face on immigration and what our Christian viewpoints would be on some of that. The challenges that come with trying to follow a scriptural directive that sometimes we clash with. In our viewpoints on immigration. But we're going to be right back in just a few moments. We're going to take a short break, so stick around, and we'll be back to continue our conversation right after this identification. All right, so 20 seconds.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
So again, thanks for sticking around. My guest this morning, Reverend Donna McHale, Dr. Hannah McHale, local audiologist, pastor of one of our Nazarene churches, the Traders Church downtown here in Joplin. So it's a good to have you with us, and again, be talking about some of these challenges that sometimes come to us. So you have not really felt any discrimination or things, but you were kind of recruited because you were an expert, in your field, if you will. But the challenge sometimes is that sometimes some of the folks who come are not experts in their field. They're not skilled labor, but yet still sometimes they're seeking some freedom from some oppression. You spoke earlier about the fact that it was tough being a Christian in a predominantly Muslim world at that particular point in time. So, for what reasons? Why should we, open our doors? Why should we let folks in if they need a place? How do we justify that in terms of, some of the challenges, or with some of our listeners out there going, well, I don't want, immigrants. What do we say to them?
Well, our country's doors have always been open to immigrants. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for immigrants, first of all. I think the education that we offer is sometimes better. And so it's one reason to have them come here. I don't know what else to say, but that we have to love like we want to be loved. If we went to their country, would we want them to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can't come. You haven't filled out the right paperwork." And, we need to be hospitable. We need to show who we are.
Yeah, I find it's very interesting to me. Joplin is the most diverse place that I've ever lived in my life. Mm-hmm. That to me is an amazing thing. I would have never theoretically guessed that would be the case when I moved here, but it truly is. I have more diversity in my parish, international diversity than I've had anywhere else I've lived. And I grew up in Florissant, Missouri, which again was Catholic land, and certainly white bread.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, my family was from across the river in Illinois, same diocese as, we were in West Central Illinois. And again, everybody looked and acted the same. Most people of German descent, all immigrated in a large wave of German, ancestry.
Sure.
And, when I moved to Joplin, I didn't know I was going to have such, I've got a large, of course, with the majority of our population winds up being, pretty white and third or fourth generation, in this country. But I've got a large pocket, of course, of Vietnamese. Like we've done our other show talking about some of the Vietnamese immigration, and we've certainly got a large group of Filipinos. Smaller groups of, in my parish in Carthage, half the parish basically is Guatemalan.
Surely.
And of course, we've got other Hispanics, not nearly the same volume, but a lot of Hispanics, from other cultures here, especially in Joplin. A lot of the Mexican immigrants are over at Sacred Heart in Webb City. We certainly try to make a space for them there so that they can kind of gather together. And of course, the Guatemalans are all at St. Anne's in Carthage. But I got to tell you, this is the most diverse place I've ever lived, which is very interesting to me.
And yet we, at least in the Protestants, we still want to be white and by ourselves. And we cannot. We have to open our doors to everyone. We have to work at doing that.
Do you have a large number? I mean, like I know most of the Guatemalans are going to come over, are going to be Catholic. Many of the Mexicans, same way, they're going to be Catholic. So I mean, we didn't feel like we really had any option or any choice. I mean, now, and I'm not going to lie to anybody and say, like, for example, even at St. Anne's, we try to bring everybody together. It doesn't always. We're not always good at it. I mean, I'm
There's
just sorry if
Nazarene.
everybody's watching this, but we're not always good at it.
Right.
We try, but we just sometimes miss in terms of just understanding the cultures and how to do that. But we try really hard because we say, well, okay, following that scriptural, admonition, we don't really have a choice. They're here, they belong.
That's right.
We got to figure out how to make a space for everybody. How do we make the space for everybody?
Of the Nazarene churches in the area, there's 3 churches that have fairly good Hispanic ministries going on, or multicultural. I know one calls themselves. So, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because we don't always mesh the way we should.
Yeah. And again, I can't say, I mean, probably people are, what I would consider well-behaved around me. So I've not really heard any, blatant racism or bigotry, at least in my own hearing or anything, because, I feel kind of obligated to say something. But, I do think we could probably do a better job at still trying to figure out how do we get people to share life enough where we can understand each other a little bit better.
I can relate to that sometime, Father Jay. Like when I see Hispanic in the office, the first thing that comes out of their mouth, "Are you Hispanic?" And they start speaking to me in Spanish. So I say, "No, I'm not," because when they see me, they think that I am from South
you've
America.
you've got a little bit of a look to you that could pass.
And that just to give them warm feeling. As an immigrant, I tell you, when we come to United States, the whole world overseas, I don't know if you've been overseas or not,
Yeah.
they think United States is the heaven of the earth. Hollywood put picture overseas that you find money on the ground in United States. But this is
I
not.
wish I could find something.
But this is not the truth, because
Right.
it takes hard work, and if there is anyone will talk about it, will be me. It took me from 1983 till 1999 to get on my feet, because all what my degrees I have done overseas, they considered it as a high school diploma here. So I have to start from scratch to get my way up. But when you come and live with the community and you just communicate with other people here, I feel like during the tornado, I found sympathy from everybody that I could never imagine what they have done for me. I have people came helping me because I lost my office in the tornado. Literally came helping me to move my instruments and move me to another office. Without anything, they were just coming out of love, and they called the firefighters for Christ. So the sensation that you get with Christianity here is totally different than how Christians feel overseas because of the persecution. That's why when I came here, it was a whole different world for me. You can hear Christ on the radio, you can see Christ on TV. We cannot do that overseas. Only in the church that when you hear about the service on Christ.
Yeah, so we can't speak about it openly.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I believe it is truly one of our blessings to be able to, do that, to be able to talk. I mean, I've had the imam on before, and, we just talked about the fact that it's, he loves the United States too,
Right.
because it's like everybody does have the freedom to practice religion however they see fit. Even if there aren't any others in the area, if you can't find any Coptic, Orthodox in the area, because you got to drive to St. Louis or Kansas City. But for at least the worship service. But but at least we've all got the ability to do that. And our Muslim brothers and sisters can pray the way they feel free to pray. You're Nazarene, I'm Catholic. I mean, and we've got we've got that freedom to be able to assemble, that freedom to be able to do those things, and to pray in the ways that we see fit, which I think is something that we don't ever dare take for granted. You certainly can see it in a different light, we sometimes want to whine about the fact that we are feeling put upon or persecuted. And I keep thinking, we don't have the slightest bit of understanding when it comes to really to persecution. So if somebody disagrees with us once in a while, I don't know that that makes it persecution. But I will say from time to time, we are systematically once in a while a little bit, targeted, because people are going to say, well, we want to get those remnants of religion out of the culture. And it's like, that's not going to happen. The United States is too. Try being a woman pastor. That's something else. That's another topic we could talk about sometime. How that works for you. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to find, women pastors to even come on the show. You guys are kind of like not quite as much of an endangered breed as the Catholic priests in the Joplin area, but you guys are, kind of like you're an endangered species and you know it, which is kind of okay. Yeah. So, what have you done with have you been able to do anything with your community in terms of education or moving folks forward? Do you get a lot of pushback whenever you talk about immigration reform?
Yes.
You get some pushback.
Yeah. My particular congregation are just learning how to take care of our community, and that means immigrants.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, I got to say, I think that in our communities, both at St. Anne's in Carthage and at St. Peter's in Joplin, certainly at St. Anne's, we've already passed the fact that we know that we need to do it. Mm-hmm. Now we just got to be more successful at the way that we help enculturate everyone to do that. But I don't think that anybody is trying to get rid of any of their fellow parishioners or do any of those kinds of things. And I think in that regard, we're blessed. St. Peter's, it's again a little bit of a different story. We've got, this family that's an immigrant family, or this family that's an immigrant, or this family that's a refugee family. Mm-hmm. We've got those different folks that are coming in, but they're not coming in en masse. They're coming in little bits, So what I will say is that probably you and I, in terms of the pastoral approach, we just got to continue trying to make sure that we get the word out there that biblically at least, the scriptures are kind of unambiguous, and the scriptures tell us that we got to figure out how to, welcome the stranger, that we got to, that we got to figure out how to be hospitable, we got to learn how to love in the way that, Jesus tells us to love. But tricky, again, we both can acknowledge the fact that we got to still do that within the realms of trying to do that as citizens of the United States and trying to figure out how that happens. But we got to be part of this dialogue. Yes, if we're not part of the dialogue, we're going to be, in big trouble down the road. They don't always want us talking about it, but we need to. So, at any rate, we're going to be right back to wrap up after this Mercy Minute. Don't go away.
The SANE program, or Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner program, is a program established to provide a coordinated, specialized care to patients or women or men who've been the victim of sexual assault.
The SANE program is really designed to be a collaborative community response to sexual assault.
It's really important to make sure that it's not just the report or the forensic, but they get all of the testing that might be needed for their health.
It's also important to know that you don't need to know if you want to press charges or not. We don't get law enforcement involved unless you request it.
I just want to express to the victim that it is never your fault. You always have the right to say no, and that it's your body. So if you say yes one time, it doesn't mean every time.
I think it's important that sexual assault victims remember they've been victims of a crime, and crime victims do not pay for those services.
Well, again, thank you for joining us for another Sunday morning of Faith in Our Hometown. We're glad that you did join us today, and we encourage you to join us whenever you can, okay? My guests this morning have been Reverend Hannah McHale and her husband, Dr. Hannah McHale. Donna is the pastor of the Traders Church, which is a Nazarene church here in the downtown Joplin area. And Hannah is, in his own right, an immigrant here to the United States from Egypt. We've been talking about the Christian viewpoint on immigration, and that as people of faith, the scriptures really kind of stand us up straight when it says that there's an attitude that we're supposed to have toward our immigrant brothers and sisters, those who are strangers in a strange land. Whether they come here to work, as Hannah did, or some of our brothers and sisters who've come because they were fleeing a situation in their own homelands that was dangerous. We've got to stay open to this and continue to reach out to our brothers and sisters in need. So join us next week for Faith in Our Hometown. If you want to argue with me, give me a call.
Thanks for watching Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.